नमः सर्वेभ्यः, सभी को नमस्कार। हमारी आज की इस व्याख्यानमाला के 9वां व्याख्यान में आप सभी का हार्दिक अभिनंदन, स्वागत हम करते हैं। आज के हमारे इस व्याख्यान में जो वाको वाक्य सदोनुग्रह भाषण व्याख्यानमाला के नाम से जो 10वां व्याख्यान यहाँ उपस्थापित कर रहे हैं, वो श्रीमान सुधीर भार्गव जी, जो BE MBA कन्वीनर ब्रह्मावर्त रिसर्च फाउंडेशन रेवाड़ी से संबंध है उनका। तो आज का विषय जो उपस्थापित करने वाले हैं वो ब्रह्मावर्त का ऐतिहासिक एवं सांस्कृतिक महत्व, इस विषय पर यहाँ अपने विचार प्रकट करेंगे और हमारे ज्ञान में वृद्धि करेंगे। हिस्टोरिकल एंड कल्चरल इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ ब्रह्मावर्त, इस विषय को यहाँ उपस्थापित करने से हमारे ज्ञान में जो वृद्धि होगी, उस हेतु हम उनके बड़े आभारी हैं और बड़े ही सौभाग्य की बात है कि हमारे बीच में वो आज उपस्थित हुए हैं। तो अभी मैं डॉक्टर सुरेंद्र मोहन मिश्र गुरुजी से निवेदन करता हूं कि वो कृपया इस कार्यक्रम की प्रस्तावना स्वरूप और हमारे जो आज के वक्ता महोदय हैं उनके अभिनंदन में और उनके परिचय के विषय में कृपया वो कुछ यहाँ रखेंगे बात। डॉक्टर सुरेंद्र मोहन मिश्र गुरु।
They were born and
गुरुजी आपकी ध्वनि नहीं आ रही है जी। हेलो हेलो।
Entire human population extincted. Then between 45 to 60,000 years ago, migrations took place from Africa under the equator where some couple of thousand people survived Tova volcanic eruption. Now, three groups started from Africa. One went to North Africa, one to Europe, one came to India. The group which came to India survived. The other two groups which went to Europe and North Africa, they could not even survive. Now the group which came to India, as per researches, genetic analysis, they were around 1200 in numbers. The genetic analysis of these people say so. One group went towards south. I'll show you a slide on this. This is a National Geographic research. According to them, one group which came to India went towards south along the western coast to maybe Tamil Nadu, and from there they went further to present-day Bangladesh and further to Burma and Southeast Asia to Australia. It happened over the years, maybe during 45 to 60,000 years ago. Another group which had entered from Kutch area of India, it moved along the Aravallis, the western side of Aravallis, and slowly they came and settled down near Pushkar also. And then they further slowly moved towards Delhi. Now, these people who settled down between Pushkar and Delhi, they evolved the basic Vedic Sanskriti. They evolved way of living, way of organized living. There's every evidence that these people started agriculture. We have evidences to prove that 9,500 years ago, barley was cultivated in this area as per published reports. We know that they have been using metal also for various uses. In fact, copper was helpful to them for various operations like agriculture. They could make agricultural tools, they could make hammers and chisels and knives and all kind of equipment. Copper was available to them 10,000 years ago. So this important area, many may wonder that if it was that important an area, why did it eclipse? Why nobody talks of Brahmavrat? Fact is that it was eclipsed under a conspiracy of British. For the first time, it was translated into English in some 1780s, 1790s by Sir William Jones. And after that, there's a long story how the British, in a systematic manner, eclipsed the things from Indian mindset. Because they knew the importance of Brahmavarta, they had known that Aryan culture had evolved in this area, but they still deliberately did not want to give credit of Aryan researches, Aryan civilizations to Indians, and they created one, what is called Aryan invasion theory. See, I'm only touching the tips of a lot of material which we have accumulated over the years. Now, Brahmavat, as I said, was the central place in our scriptures for evolving spirituality, organized living. It was the place of Manu, it was the place of Bhrigu, who together gave the sermon in what is called Manusmriti on organized way of living. First, basic points of evolving of human civilization. So there's tremendous continuity which we have proved through scriptures, how the 10,000 years old Sanskriti is still followed by Hindus, not only in India, but all over the world. It was the place of spiritual philosophies. When I say spiritual philosophies, it's a big subject itself. Upanishads are all about spiritual philosophies. But the basics of these philosophies are again forgotten because of certain reasons. Today, I'm not dealing with spiritual philosophies some other day because Upanishads control them. All Upanishads were rather the first 10, what we call oldest Upanishads. They were conceived and evolved and jotted down in Brahmavrat. I have identified many ashrams of those seers who composed them. This is the essence of Hinduism, spirituality. And this is the great asset Aryans had with them and now Hindus have with them. So location of Brahmavat will help find many other things like who founded Vedic Sanskriti, who were the Vedic people, what were the parameters, and what is true Hinduism. As I said, it was dependent, it was evolved out of spirituality. Then we want to present the evidences of those things mentioned in scriptures like ashrams of those seers, especially the oldest of the Vedas, number 6, 3, and 7, which I consider are the oldest. And the things mentioned in mandalas 6 and 3 of Rigved, everything pertains to this particular area. So we'll know really what were the parameters of Vedic people, the Aryans. When I again and again say Vedic people and Aryans were the same people. Now Brahmavarta, what was the common link between all three? Brahmavat, Vedic, and Aryan. All three relate to the spirituality. Brahmavat was the land of spirituality, Brahman, Brahmavrat. It has not to do with the Brahmins as such. Brahman, which is a form of energy. And this is again a different topic. I won't discuss it today. Today we are discussing only history and culture of Brahmavrat. So Brahmavat was defined its boundaries were defined in Manusmriti. See, after the floods, we know there was an ice age. 12,500 years ago, glaciers started melting. People had lived here. They had tremendous losses during floods, which continued for a very long time. Aryavat was inhabited with 10 sons of Manu when Manu gave the Manusmriti, and it was 10,000 years ago. See, after the floods, the conference was held in Brahmavat as per scriptures. See, whatever I'm saying is basically from scriptures, and we have scientific evidences for that. So the conference which Manu addressed pertained to how to share your knowledge and infrastructure or assets in saving the entire human population of that time, because floods created havoc in almost every city in North India. Entire North India had tremendous losses. So Manu asked them to share things and start living in an organized manner. How the government should be. See, he's telling all this 10,000 years ago. How the rule should be, what should be the duties and responsibilities of various varnas in society. He said that better divide society into 4 segments and let them be specialists of their jobs. In case of emergency, let everybody share whatever one has. And then sharing of knowledge also started that resulted into jotting down of Vedas. The oldest of the Vedas, as I said, 6 mandala is the oldest. Now it has happenings of Manu's period, of Raja Sharyati, the royal Vaidyas, Ashwini Kumar brothers. So jotting of the compilation of Rig Veda had started 10,000 years ago. The happenings of that time are mentioned there, and we have scientific evidences for that. Now, after that conference, a way of life, like Supreme Court says, Hinduism is a way of life. It is basically based on Manusmriti. I think Hinduism was an evolved religion even 10,000 years ago, and spirituality was their main parameter. A lot of things in spirituality. Now, what happens is, why did the great civilization eclipsed? As I said, it was the role of British in promoting Aryan invasion theory, that you came from abroad, you displaced the people in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and you took over the North India. That's absolutely baseless. And we have evidences for that because spirituality was the essence of Aryans. They were basically spiritual people. This, these facts were brought in public domain by one Sir William Jones, who died in 1794. Now, Sir William Jones had, for the first time, translated Manusmriti into English. And they were bewildered that how improved Indian society was during the flood times. Because European culture evolved much later stage, but Indians were fully evolved 10,000 years ago. And for this research, this translation of Sir William Jones, the East India Company, which had brought him here to translate Indian scriptures, including Mughal Muslim scriptures or Hindu scriptures, they had honored him. And they erected his statue in the most important cathedral in London, St. Paul's Cathedral. And there, Sir William Jones was holding a book called Manu. So one can draw a conclusion how much importance they had given to Manu's thoughts or Manusmriti. I would like to show you.
Share screen.
Give me a minute. I'll show you a statue slide.
Share screen. नीचे के दोनों बताइए ये दोनों.
You know, this statue will show you
जाओ अपने presentation में. उसमें जाइए. Click करो. Cancel. Play.
see, this statue is holding a book, and it's written on the book Manu. Now I have pictures of two other statues also, which were put in different other churches. One was holding a book called Manuak Laws, and one was holding Laws of Manu. Now, this shows that Manusmriti was a
Share screen.
important presentation.
Just give me a minute.
So Manusmriti was an important scripture even that point in time, and British deliberately eclipsed that scripture to deny.
Just give me a minute.
Just give me a minute. Let me set up this video again.
नीचे जाइए.
Again, it has gone.
Presentation has sorry for this.
I'm sorry for this disturbance. Now, as I said, location of Brahmavrat was very precisely described in Manusmriti. A shlok, second chapter, 17th shlok, describes Brahmavrat located between two revered rivers, Saraswati and Drishadvati. And shlok 19 of the same chapter, second, describes the neighboring states of Brahmavrat as Kuru Pradesh in north, Matsya Desh in southeast, Panchala in northeast, and Shursenak in east, Salva in the west. And then Shatpat Brahman tells another interesting information about Drishadvati river that had flown from south to north during the Vedic period. Also, Saraswati had flown along the Aravali's on the western side during the great floods 10,000 years ago. And when Drishadvati met Saraswati, it had flown from east to west, somewhere south of Delhi, from, say, Rewari district, it crossed. I have a slide for that also.
Just give me a minute. Sure.
Again, give me a minute. Let me put that slide.
Zoom में जाएंगे, zoom में जाएंगे. Share screen.
Now this slide will show
Share.
the exact location of this Kuru Pradesh is in the north of Brahmavrat. Then in the west we have Salva. In the northeast we have Delhi and Panchala. Panchala had extended right up to Uttar Pradesh. Then in the east we have Sursena and Matsya states. Now this map, you can see the Drishadvati river coming from Ajmer side towards north, towards Delhi. This is present day called the Sahabi river. And in between the two, we have Apaya river, which was the place for all major ashrams. It had its origin in Neem Ka Thana. We have some important locations in Brahmavrat, Khedri copper mines, and Dosi Hills. So this is the map as per scriptures some 10,000 years ago.
Share end कर दीजिए. Presentation खोलिए या इसे खोल दीजिए. कर दीजिए.
Now, there is some confusion on Saraswati River. See, Saraswati River had changed its course several times during the last 10,000 years. In fact, 4 times as per satellite images. But I won't touch it here. It will be a pretty long discussion again. I would like to discuss how the British played a role in denigration of Vedic scriptures and eclipse of Brahmavarta. Now, as I told you, Sir William Jones had translated Manusmriti and other scriptures. Mainly, a lot of interest was generated to translation of Upanishads, which are very high in value, which are mind-boggling, which was mind-boggling research, and Europeans had they were awed by Indian knowledge at that point in time. So between 1780s to 1790s, these scriptures came to Europeans' light, Europeans' knowledge. From 1790s to 1835, 1835 is a pillar in Indian civilization, in the sense the downfall of Indian civilization started by British deliberately. They denigrated all our scriptures and they eclipsed Brahmavat altogether. So during 1790s to 1835, as I said, India was in awe in Europe. 1835, we know how Macaulay gave a theory that we have to destroy Indian Sanskriti if we have to rule them. He said this in various places, in the meetings of Asiatic societies in India, in London, in British Parliament, and there are evidences for that. We should not be spending time on it. People know Macaulay. But what happened most disturbing was that in 1840, they introduced Aryan invasion theory. And they said all this literature belonged to Aryans and they belong to somewhere in Central Europe. They evolved this and they started changing the scriptures slowly. There are evidences of that. Max Muller had written to his wife how he did it. Then G.D. Trevelyan, who wrote Macaulay's autobiography and was his brother-in-law also, he agreed that we have done so much that Indians won't be able to locate their roots anymore. So these things happened during 1840, 1861. But between, reaction to whatever changes were made had happened in 1857, what we call first War of Independence.
I'll show you another picture.
So 1856, 1857, a revolution took place in India, which was led by the people who were associated with religions. They were the saints, they were the ashram munis and seers of that time who immediately observed that changes are being made, and 1857 revolution was led by those who were basically opposing these vital changes in our scriptures and our culture. In 1861, Archaeological Survey of India was created. They further sort of cemented the changes that were made by Christian missionaries in this country. From 1857 to 1947, things continued to deteriorate and nothing much has happened even after independence in 47. Brahmavat, the great area where human civilization evolved, where basics of Hindu culture evolved lies still neglected. Now, I have several evidences to show how British did it in calculated manner under a conspiracy. I like to deal with Aryan invasion theory also at this point in time because, as I said, Aryan invasion theory was introduced in 1840 by Max Muller and his associates who were operating under the guidance of the church to dismantle Indian knowledge at that point in time. See, we could not convince the entire world, who were the Aryans. We are still following the definition which was explained to us by church or Max Muller, that Aryans were merely the noble people. In fact, Aryans were the spiritual people. Because Aryans' definition was given by Manu himself. And Swami Vivekananda, who was very well versed with Indian scriptures, he quoted again and again in his talks, word over, that Aryan term is defined by Manu, and it said that a person who is born in spiritual environment to spiritual parents, where spirituality is an essential trait, is an Aryan. Everything revolved around spirituality. I wonder those who claim that they are Aryans follow any tenements of spirituality. So we have to redefine the term. We have to reintroduce this term. Who are the Aryans, the true Aryans? See, all Indian religions, be it Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism, they follow those tenements, those rituals, or those thoughts which are Aryan. These all four religions are spiritual basically. They are Brahmanic religions. And we have another type of religions in the world which is called Abrahmanic religions. Those who don't follow the Brahmanic religions or are different from them. This is the thing which Sanskrit scholars or those who are working for Hinduism should bring to the notice of people. What are the basics of Aryans and Unaryans, Brahminics or Abrahmanics? Now, Indians have great reservoir of spirituality in various scriptures, mainly Upanishads. I think if time is limited, I'll explain this in brief. The concept of spiritual body was defined by Udalak Rishi in Upanishads to his son Nachiketa during conversations. We know that how Bhrigu went to his father Varun Bhagwan to learn the process of moksha. In Taittiriya Upanishad, it's very well explained. And then everything about Brahman was devised, practiced, and utilized for improving the efficiency of human brain by the Aryans, by the Vedic people, or even in present day India. Hindus are re-getting into yoga, meditation, which were the real gems or assets or essence of Aryans. So there's tremendous continuity in Aryan theories or Aryans rituals or Aryans knowledge. I want to show you another slide which will show you this
Share screen.
Aryans, how Aryans migrated from India to
Zoom call.
different places.
Give
Let me
me
share this last slide.
share screen.
Just a minute.
नीचे अब आप आ जाओ प्रेजेंटेशन में अपनी क्लिक करो कैंसिल प्ले
See, this is the map. You can see how 45 to 60,000 years ago people came from Africa to India. They entered from Gujarat side. This is a map by National Geographic, and it's called a recombinational analysis considering every little thing available on migration of human beings, including genetic theory. We also have analyzed the genetic theory, and I have evolved that our haplogroup evolved in Brahmavrat some 27,000 years ago, and R1A1A and R1A1B, which is held by Europeans, Middle East people, and Indians, they all have migrated from Brahmavrat. You can see from this map that one group which went to South India, they further went to Japan, and in the north they went to China, and in the southeast they went to via Burma to Malaysia, Hong Kong, Singapore, and then further to Australia. The genetic analysis of the people, the oldest people there, tribals in Australia, confirm that they have links with the Central Indian tribals. See, this group, one group which came to Brahmavrat, they evolved here everything, the Vedic scripture, their Aryan tenements, every little information about Hinduism that developed here 10,000 years ago and beyond 10,000 years ago. These people had migrated to Europe and on the borders of Afghanistan and Iran, called later on they called themselves Zoroastrians. So Zoroastrians also migrated from Brahmavrat. It is mentioned not only in Indian scriptures, but also in Avesta, Zoroastrians' own scriptures. And they have described Brahmavrat very minutely and precisely. They have said that we are descendants of Manu and Prabhu, and our ancestors lived in Brahmavrat. They have explained why they had to migrate. There were clashes between Asurs and Devas, the so-called Devas, though both were Aryans. And they written their own Avesta on the basis of Rig Veda. And they have given a route also, how they migrated from Brahmavat to borders of Iran and Afghanistan. They have described the land conditions in that point in time. There are some areas where they went first were marshy lands. They could not cross them. Then they had to take a route again. They crossed the Sindhu River, how they went there. So my research has information from Avesta also, which has described Brahmavata's boundary so well. And I think time is enough. I would like to take some questions. So I thank you, gentlemen, for listening to me patiently. This is the first time we are sharing on Zoom, and I would welcome any question regarding this small presentation.
Thank you. We welcome Mr. Rajesh Purohit, who has also worked a lot on the river Saraswati. Also welcome Dr. Vikram Sharma, an assistant professor of geology in the Department of Geology in our university. So now this lecture is open to discussion, and many things he touched upon. And one thing, little thing I want to add, that 1840 to 1926, if this was worked out, Aryan invasion theory, AIT, in 1840, then 1926, when Sir John Marshall did the excavation in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, then it came very handy for the British people to prove this with some kind of tangible physical proof. So from 1840 to 1926, the thing was ready to be served around the world. So Aryan invasion theory, now also we have great difficulty in, and people all across the world, the Hindu people and some of our good friends also, foreigners, they are refuting point by point this Aryan invasion theory that Aryans did not come. What Aryan from Mahabharata up to Australia, even up to Korea, etc., even as he told very clearly, and the slides that he showed are very helpful, useful in understanding. But some of the points that he speaks of are very new in research, and those things should be discussed by the scholars present here. Yes, thank you.
Sure. I invite questions on my presentation, History and Culture of Brahmavrat.
हेलो।
Yes.
हाँ नमस्कार सर।
नमस्कार।
हाँ सर, आपका अभी मैंने थोड़ा लेट ही ज्वाइन हो पाया, लेकिन थोड़ा बहुत फिर भी सुना तो ठीक अच्छा लगा। मतलब मेरा एक प्रश्न है कि आज के संदर्भ में ब्रह्मावर्त आर्यव्रत का भौगोलिक क्षेत्र क्या हो सकता है, और इसको हम
मैंने
बात
नक्शा बनाया।
हाँ सर,
उसका मैप मैंने रिलीज किया हुआ है और
ठीक है
अभी
सर।
दिखाया भी था।
यस सर,
पर
यस
वो
सर।
बेसिकली जो ब्रह्माव्रत था वो पुष्कर से लेके दिल्ली तक का एरिया था, क्योंकि दोनों नदियां के बीच का एरिया था। तो जो सबसे पुरानी सरस्वती नदी थी 10,000 साल पहले, वो अरावली के वेस्टर्न साइड में साथ से गुजरती थी। और दृशद्वती नदी बिफोर सीस्मिक एक्टिविटी इन 7,500 इयर्स अगो वो पुष्कर से निकल के आती थी, ऐसा ग्रंथों में लिखा हुआ है। पुष्कर से दिल्ली की तरफ आती थी। ये अकेली नदी थी, विशाल नदी, जो दक्षिण से उत्तर की तरफ आती थी और दिल्ली के पास आके ये नदियां मिलती थी।
ठीक।
इनफैक्ट सरस्वती में इतना पानी आता था कि ब्रिटिश पीरियड में कुछ एक्सकेवेशंस हुई थी सांभर लेक में, तो उन्होंने पाया कि 300 फुट की गहराई तक सांभर लेक में अरावलीज और हिमालय के पत्थर, रोड़े, बोल्डर्स मिलते हैं। मतलब बाढ़ के समय में ना सिर्फ शिवालिक का पानी वहां आता था सांभर लेक में, जो बिल्कुल अरावली से सटा हुआ वेस्टर्न साइड पे एक काफी बड़ी लेक है, नमक के लिए जानी जाती है। उसमें तो हम ये समझ सकते हैं कि जो सरस्वती नदी थी उस समय 10,000 साल पहले, उसमें 200 किलोमीटर चौड़ी अरावलीज का पानी आता था, आधा पानी, क्योंकि आधा तो गुजरात की तरफ चला जाता था। इधर शिवालिक का पानी, इधर हिमालय से पानी आता था, और कितने बड़े बड़े बोल्डर्स अगर उसमें मिले हैं 300 फुट की गहराई तक, जो ब्रिटिश पीरियड में, तो ब्रिटिशर को सब पता था ये कौन सी नदी कहाँ है, कौन सा पहाड़ कहाँ है, कैसे नदी आई है, और ये एविडेंसेस हैं इस बात के।
ठीक सर, मतलब सरस्वती नॉर्थ ईस्ट से नॉर्थ वेस्ट से आती थी, नॉर्थ ईस्ट से आती थी और साउथ वेस्ट में जाती थी, और जो दृष्टवती थी वो इसमें से साउथ से आते आकर या नॉर्थ की तरफ आती थी मतलब।
ये सरस्वती तो ऊपर से ही आती थी, जब यमुना नदी और यमुना और सतलुज के बीच से
हाँ
आती
हाँ।
थी, और ये फिर दिल्ली के वेस्ट से निकल के दादरी के पास से ये पिलानी, झुंझुनू, सीकर होती हुई ऐसे ये रास्ता था उसका, जो सबसे पुरानी नदी है। बाद में 7,500 साल पहले जो सीस्मिक एक्टिविटीज हुई, वो सीस्मिक एक्टिविटीज ऐसी थी कि तिब्बतियन प्लेट
यस सर।
ने नॉर्थ प्लेट को, जो जो
हाँ।
इंडियन प्लेट है, उसने तिब्बतियन प्लेट को पुश किया, तो वो जो जंक्शन है वहां एक रिज सा बन गया, और उस नदी ने अपना दक्षिण का जो रास्ता है वो छोड़ के वो पश्चिम की तरफ बहने लगी, सरस्वती नदी, उस समय 7,500 साल पहले। और फिर धीरे धीरे उसमें, क्योंकि थोड़ा ही पानी आता था अरावलीज का, तो फिर वो सूख गई।
तो हम क्या दिल्ली हरिद्वार रिज है, जो दिल्ली हरिद्वार रिज, उसके साथ जोड़ सकते हैं? क्योंकि पहले तो ये दक्षिण, जैसा आप बता रहे हैं कि दक्षिण की तरफ जाती थी, तो दिल्ली हरिद्वार रिज जैसे ऊपर आ गई, तो उसकी वजह से हो सकता है कि ये वेस्ट की तरफ मुड़ गई होगी, पश्चिम की तरफ।
हाँ, कुछ उसका कारण है, नीचे कितनी कुछ एक्टिविटीज हुई ये शोध का विषय
या
है, पर हाँ वहाँ रिज जरूर बना, और वो नदियां सारी ही उस समय इंडिया की नदियों ने अपने रुख बदल लिए थे। पर सैटेलाइट इमेजेस ये बताती हैं कि कौन सी नदी कहाँ
ठीक सर।
थी इतिहास में। वो नाम तो नहीं बताती सैटेलाइट इमेजेस, पर ये जरूर
यस,
बता देती हैं कि हाँ यहाँ से एक नदी गुजरती थी।
बिल्कुल सर। थैंक यू सर।
You're welcome.
राजेश पुरोहित जी जो निदेशक रहे हैं नेशनल म्यूजियम कोलकाता में, हाँ वो
हाँ
कुछ इसके ऊपर टिप्पणियां करेंगे। राजेश पुरोहित जी।
हाँ।
Namaste, Bhargav Saab.
Namaste. It's nice to
I'm
listen you again after a long
I'm
time.
really excited to see you and your works. It is an incredible work which has been done by you. Hearty congratulations. You are
Thank
bringing
you.
new life to Indian history and Indian civilization. For the study of Indian civilization and Indian history, you have done a commendable job. Hearty congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
with regard to Aryan invasion, I would like to, compliment what you have already spoken. A few other things which I would like to highlight here. That first of all, we should not speak anything about a concept of invasion that had ever taken place. This is number one. And number two is that I don't believe in the theory of Aryan invasion or concept of Aryan as such, because every polished and gentle and civilized people are Aryan, and so there could not be any specific a race or a ethnic group or any population can be associated with Aryan as such. This is what I personally believe, and the most important thing is that I agree with you that how Indian ideas, Indian language, and Indian concept have migrated to various parts of the world. And the very concept of Indo-European language, the moment you say Indo-European language means both European and Indian, and it begins with European, not with European, it begins with Indo. So Indo means Indian language, Indian, how Indian language has a connection with the European language. It is not how European language has a connection with Indian language, because it is the mother language is the most polished language with the so-called Aryan, whatever you call, so-called civilized people used to talk, is the language called Sanskrit. So this Sanskrit language has an affinity with many of the European languages. And this is how we are coming across with certain evidences in the later part of the history. For example, in Turkey, we have a very famous inscription called the Boğaz Koi inscription. And Turkey is a very important strategic point to understand the Asian civilization and the European civilization. So it is a place which connects both the Asian and European. And here we have found the names of Varuna, Mitra, and all these Vedic deities, which often we talk about the Brahmavarta culture and Brahmavarta civilization. So this is one aspect which can also contribute to the fact to argue that how there is no concept of Aryan invasion as such, but the Aryan who, or the so-called polished people who used to speak a polished language, a refined language, which is called Sanskrit. And they had their wonderful knowledge called the Vedic knowledge. And how this Vedic knowledge has migrated to different parts of the world has been evident from this inscription itself, which speaks about the Rigvedic characters like Indra, Varuna, Mitra, and others. And this is a very important evidence which needs to be corroborated while examining the Indo-European or the so-called Aryan culture that we talk about, generally talk. And the second important thing is that the continuity which you told, that how the continuity of the Indian population are still practicing the same Vedic culture, what it ought to be there in the Brahmavat period or Brahmavat geographical setup that we had and a civilization that we had. And this continuity itself, so say for example, the Rigvedic mantras or the Vedic mantras which are chanted in, and the rishis which are mentioned in the various scriptures are still known to the people of India. They believe in it, they practice it, and this is an integral part of our social, cultural, and religious system, and we have a pattern in which these things cannot be segregated. And this is how we will have to educate the people that here is a culture which is thousands of years old, and here is a civilization which we call the so-called the most polished and cultured people of the world, have given a lot of, have contributed a lot to the world civilization through their knowledges. And these knowledges are nothing but the knowledge of the Vedic knowledges that the Brahmavat people conceived and propagated through the history. Thank you so much.
Welcome. See, basically, if I may reply in a few sentences, Sanskrit, yes, I've done a lot of work on Sanskrit, how it evolved in Brahmavat. It was the language of Devas, those people who jotted down scriptures, Vedas and Upanishads. It's a very scientific language. In fact, when I speak sometimes on evolvement of spirituality, I'll do speak on Sanskrit, which is a a wonderful language, very scientific. Some other time. Any other question, please?
One thing as I find it, Bhargav ji, that this Bruno and Bhrigu, etc. Bhrigurvai Varunihi Varuna Pitaram Upasasara. This passage you quoted in English, translating it. So you see, Varuna is a deity and Bhrigu is a seer. Angira is a seer. So you see, the father becomes a deity and the son becomes a seer. Bhrigu is never a deity and Varuna is never a seer. Varuna is a deity. So how human beings, just now you uttered the word Deva, and Satvata Brahmana says, Vidwan Sovai Devaha. Those who knew the great yajnas, those who knew the Vedas, and all those people, they are called Devas. Either they were seers or they were practitioners of that Vedic knowledge. So they are called Devas. So the Devas later, they became deities. And in our Deva Shastra, that is our Vedic mythology or iconography, everywhere else. Later the Puranic deities also came in to join the Vedic deities, and the Vedic deities also had some transformation. Indra was not the same, Vishnu was not the same. All of them got transformed through the ages, but the same Vedic things remained as a thing of the past, which now deserves this kind of research. So this Varuna, and once you told me that about 36 generations of those great people, they were there. And in Sayana, in his Veda Bhasya, in the first Sukta itself in the Veda, he tells that who are the ancient most seers? The reply is Bhrigu Angira Prabhritayaha, Bhrigu, Angira, etc. And particularly they belong to, and Angira, you know, Bharadwaj also belong there to Angira race. So the clan, so all those people, most of the, and you told that the oldest as in the Rig Veda, 10 mandalas. So people were there. So a lot of research needs to be done, anthropological angle, from geological angle, from historical angle, cultural angle, and also liturgical, religious angle. So all those things, and the whole people of the world are one. So this genome theory has come as a great, you can say, pathfinder, but still humanity, because divided by politics and economics, so it doesn't believe itself to be one, and divisive forces are working behind. So an AIT also is a kind of divisive force, that we are different. We have come into India, the British people, as much as the Aryans had come into India, defeating the people and forcing them to go back to the south. So all these things, actually the geopolitics. Geopolitics is actually placing the truth before us in a very truncated manner, and a very sadly, very, you can say, very worse manner, inhuman manner, and perhaps lack of knowledge. And this is the dividing force. And with knowledge, with proper research like this, we must have to face the divisive force around the world. So it's a very good thing. And if someone else has some question, it will be good. I am happy that Rajesh Purohit has joined and he had his expert opinions. We had also a lecture by him earlier. I could not particularly phone you up that Sudhir Bhargav also could join that day. And also I asked Chaudhuri, he assured he would come. He has some busy schedule. So, okay, Ravi Datta, see if someone else is to put a question, then otherwise you sum up.
धन्यवादाः। अन्यः कश्चन यदि अत्र प्रश्नं प्रस्तोतुं टिप्पणीं वा स्थापयितुम् इच्छति तर्हि भवतां स्वागतम्। आप कोई भी अन्य कोई टिप्पणी हो, कोई प्रश्न हो, तो आप यहाँ उपस्थापित कर सकते हैं।
पूछिए, जो विद्यार्थी हैं पूछिए, पूछना सीखिए। हाँ, प्रश्न सही हो गलत हो पूछना सीखिए। हाँ, संस्कृत के बारे में कितनी अच्छी बातें उन्होंने बताई, और जो है उपनिषदों के बड़े भक्त हैं, और ये जो स्पिरिचुअल फिलोसफी के बारे में बताया, ये सारा संस्कृत में है। तो इनमें कुछ संस्कृत के छात्र हैं तो पूछ सकते हैं। तो एक आर्य शब्द का अर्थ भी है कि अच्छी भाषा का व्यवहार करने वाला, यानी शरीर, वाणी एवं मन में जो शुद्ध है उसको आर्य कहा गया। इसका एक लिंग्विस्टिक डायरेक्शन भी है, और एक जो हम कर्म करते हैं, और जो वाणी बोलते हैं, और जो विचार करते हैं, तीनों का आर्य से वह हो गया जो है। और कितने कितने बड़ी बातें सारे, ये तो फुल ऑफ हिस्ट्री एंड ज्योग्राफी। वेद जो है ये हमारी रियल हिस्ट्री है, रियल ज्योग्राफी है, जहाँ से हम स्टार्ट किए, फिर हम पुराणों के इतिहास भूगोल के बीच में से लौट कर निकल करके हम यहाँ तक पहुँचते हैं आज जो है। इसलिए वो सारे जिनको माइथोलॉजी करके टाल दिया था विदेशी लोगों ने, और वही 1784 में जो उसने बनाया एशियरी सोसाइटी, बाद में थोड़े में बॉम्बे में भी बनाया रॉयल एशियरी सोसाइटी ऑफ बॉम्बे, और उन सभी संस्थाओं के द्वारा भारत हनन का कार्य बड़ा प्रबल वेग से चल रहा था। लेकिन ऊपर प्रचार हो रहा था बड़े बड़े यहीं के महापुरुषों के द्वारा भी कि नहीं, ब्रिटिश लोग जो है वो एक बहुत बड़ा कार्य कर रहे हैं, द रीडिस्कवरिंग इंडिया। जबकि रीडिस्कवरिंग नहीं था, इंडिया को दबाना उनकी दृष्टि में ये प्रमुख कार्य था। और उन्होंने बताया कि कैसे मैकॉले इस काम को किया। तो ये सब चीजें आज इतिहास हैं, परंतु इतिहास का बोध हमें आधुनिक समय में बेहतर जीने के लिए प्रेरित कर सकता है। इसलिए इतिहास कभी गौण पक्ष नहीं है, प्रमुख पक्ष है। इस करके हमारे समय में क्या होता था, वैदिक काल में, पौराणिक काल में जो पुरोहित होता था, जैसे वशिष्ठ पुरोहित हैं, रघुवंश का इतिहास वशिष्ठ राम को सुनाएंगे, क्यों ना। वशिष्ठ राष्ट्र के हितैषी हैं, राजकुल के हितैषी हैं, प्रजाओं के हितैषी हैं, अत्यंत अध्यात्मनिष्ठ हैं, त्यागी हैं, तपस्वी हैं। इसलिए पुरोहित को इतिहास सुनाने का अधिकार होता है। आज हमारे पास राजेश पुरोहित जी भी प्रेजेंट हैं, और जो सुधीर भार्गव जी हैं भी भृगुवंशी हैं। इनके नाम को देखिए, ये भी एक बहुत बड़ी लड़ाई है। लोग अपने टाइटल्स को छोड़ देते हैं, नेम एंड सरनेम हमारे ये जीनस स्पीसीज की तरह है। इन बातों को जो छोड़ देगा धीरे धीरे, जैसे मैं वहाँ गया 1834 में, जब मॉरिशस में लोग यहाँ से गए, गियाना में गए, सुरीनाम में गए, ब्रिटिश लोगों ने, फ्रांस लोगों ने क्या किया, जो शासक थे उनके टाइटल्स को हटा दिया, हटा करके उनके नेम को सरनेम बना दिया था। इसलिए बहुत सारे लोगों से मैं मिला हूँ, वो जानते नहीं वो किस कुल के हैं, किस मूल के हैं। और रहे ब्राह्मण, क्षत्रिय, वैश्य, शूद्र, निषाद, ये 5 वैरायटी से वो क्या रहे जो भारत से आए थे, ये भी वो भूल चुके हैं। परंतु दई बात, भारत में हम इन बातों को याद रखते हैं। उसके लिए हमारी जो भाषिकी परंपरा है, हमारे जो ऋषि छंद देवता का क्रम है, जो विनियोग है, आज भी जिस प्रकार से भी हो, जैसे यज्ञ हैं, ये सब हमें बचाने वाले हैं। अतः धर्म में पुनः आस्था हमें इतिहास का सही अध्ययन फिर से प्रदान करता है। तो जिस चीज से हम जो है श्री सुधीर भार्गव जी का जो इतना श्रम इसमें करते हैं, इस शोध में जो है उनकी एक दृष्टि है, एक रुझान है, तो उसको हम प्रणाम करते हैं। आगे हम एक जो है AR चौधरी जी का भी एक व्याख्यान इसमें कराएंगे। पहले एक व्याख्यान उनका कराया था नंदा केंद्र में। तो ये सब व्याख्यान हमारे लिए अनमोल हैं, और हमें फिर से हरियाणा में भी, इसलिए मैं कहता हूँ हरियाणा संस्कृत की मातृभूमि है। इस बात को समझाने के लिए सुधीर भार्गव जैसे विद्वान की आवश्यकता है, जो हरियाणा सरकार को समझाएं कि हरियाणा संस्कृत की जन्मभूमि है। अतः यहाँ पहली से 12वीं तक संस्कृत को कंपलसरी करना बच्चों के लिए, जो हरियाणवी हिंदी के साथ में संस्कृत ना पढ़ें, उनको हरियाणवी हिंदी के बेहतर रूप समझ में नहीं आएगा। और शुरू से कत्थक भाषा को नहीं पढ़ाना चाहिए बच्चों को, इससे बच्चों का समूल नाश हो रहा है। इस बात को देख करके भी हम अनदेखा कर देते हैं। और मूड से हम मार देते हैं बच्चों को, तो किस प्रकार से उनको मातृभाषा के प्रति, माता के प्रति, मातृभूमि के प्रति आदर बढ़ेगा। केवल राष्ट्रवाद का स्वर नहीं है, राष्ट्रवाद को सही कायम करने के लिए हमें इस प्रकार के शोध और उनका प्रयोग की आवश्यकता है। तो बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। हाँ रवि दत्त, अभी कल्याण मंत्र से समाप्त कर दीजिए। ओम।
ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ओम शांति शांति शांतिः। नमः सर्वेभ्यः। ओम नमस्कार।
Namaskar. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Namaskar.
Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you so much.